a good day out here. We had a good time. Y'all should have seen it. Eka got a purse. That was kind of fun. Eka got the purse and he traded it out pretty quick. It was pretty. He traded his traded it. All right. So good news and bad news. Sunday school. We're in Proverbs 28. I've got the longest outline for Proverbs 28. This is the longest of my outlines for today. So let me get there with you. We will have Christmas service. And we'll have that. Hey, the Clemens brothers got here. Look at you guys. So we will have Christmas service on Wednesday. And we'll have a good time with that. And then be in prayer for our family. We'll be traveling back. I will be traveling out. I won't be here this next Sunday, but we have services covered. So be in prayer for those who will be here, and I'll pray for those who are preaching. I mean, not for those who are here. Let me rephrase that one. No offense, Aaron. All right, so take your Bibles, go to Proverbs 28, and we're going to read this through here. Again, when you read through Proverbs, there's not always like one chapter fits all, one group, easy synopsis for the entire chapter. Some chapters you have to fight through it, and there's never going to be an alliterated outline in that chapter. But Proverbs 28 gives us an alliterated outline, and for that I'm thankful. So in Proverbs 28, the Bible says in verse number 1, "The wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion." This is why I believe the Bible is against running uselessly. Marathons, yes. Running for the sake of running, not needed. All right. The wicked flee when no man pursueth. There's a biblical reason for not exercising. For those of you taking notes at home, I'm kidding. All right. But the righteous are bold as a lion. For the transgression of a land, many are the princes thereof. But by a man of understanding and knowledge, the state thereof shall be prolonged. A poor man that oppresseth the poor is like a sweeping rain which leaveth no food. They that forsake the law praise the wicked, but such as keep the law contend with them. Contend with who? The wicked, right? Verse number 5. Evil men understand not judgment, but they that seek the Lord understand all things. Better is the poor that walketh in his uprightness than he that is perverse in his ways, though he be rich. Whoso keepeth the law is a wise son, but he that is a companion of riotous men shameth his father. He that by usury and unjust gain increaseth his substance, he shall gather for him that will pity the poor. He that turneth away his ear from hearing the law, even his prayer shall be abomination. Whoso causeth the righteous to go astray in an evil way, he shall fall himself into his own pit. But the upright shall have good things in possession. The rich man is wise in his own conceit, but the poor that hath understanding searcheth him out. When righteous men do rejoice, there is great glory. But when the wicked rise, a man is hidden. He that covereth his sins shall not prosper, but whoso confesseth and forsaketh them shall have mercy. Happy is the man that feareth always, but he that hardeneth his heart shall fall into mischief. As a roaring lion and a raging bear, so is a wicked ruler over the poor people. The prince that wanteth understanding is also a great oppressor, but he that hateth covetousness shall prolong his days. A man that doeth violence to the blood of any person shall flee to the pit. Let no man stay him. Whoso walketh uprightly shall be saved, but he that is perverse in his ways shall fall at once. He that tilleth his hand shall have plenty of bread. He that tilleth his land, shall have plenty of bread. That makes more sense. But he that followeth after vain persons shall have poverty enough. A faithful man shall abound with blessings, but he that maketh haste to be rich shall not be innocent. To have respected persons is not good, for a piece of bread that man will transgress. He that hasteth to be rich hath an evil eye, and considereth not that poverty shall come upon him. He that rebuketh a man afterwards shall find more favor than he that flattereth with the tongue. Whoso robbeth his father or his mother, and saith, It is no transgression, the same is a companion of a destroyer. He that is of a proud heart stirreth up strife, but he that putteth his trust in the Lord shall be made fat. Hey, verse 26. He that trusteth in his own heart is a fool, but whoso walketh wisely, he shall be delivered. He that giveth unto the poor shall not lack, but he that hideth his eyes shall have many a curse. When the wicked arise, men hide themselves, but when they perish, the righteous increase. In this passage we're going to read, and we see in the 28 verses, it speaks a lot about these four people in this chapter. It speaks about these four repeatedly. Number one is the poor. Number two is the proud. Number three is the prince. And number four are the prudent. Those are four people found in this passage. If you look at it, these are four people alliterated that you can find in this passage. So let's stop first and foremost and look at Proverbs chapter 28 and go back to verse number 3. We read the entire chapter. Let's go back to verse number 3. And it says, a poor man that oppresseth the poor is like a sweeping rain which leaveth no food. Then in verse number 6, better is the poor that walketh in his uprightness than he that is perverse in his ways, though he be rich. Verse number 19, it talks about the poor. He that tilleth his land shall have plenty of bread, but he that followeth after vain persons shall have poverty enough. Then in verse number 22, he that hasteth to be rich hath an evil eye, and considereth not that poverty shall come upon him. So there's three reasons of why a person comes to poverty, or there's three reasons of why a person is a poor person. There's a difference between poor and poverty. Okay? There's a difference between poor and poverty. Poverty is someone who goes without. They have nothing. A poor person is someone who has, they just don't have as much as you. And poor is relative. Poor is relative. The Bible says, in Matthew chapter 5 and Luke chapter 6, I think it is, it talks about the Beatitudes, and it talks about blessed are the poor in spirit, right? So the poor is a relative term. It's a generic relative term. We can consider ourselves poor today. Even if you live in $1 million mansion, you're still poor. By someone else's standard, you're still poor. You can be the most richest person on the planet, and you're still poor. But you're missing so much more. You're missing the purpose of why you have it, right? We all have been given great things. The Bible says, to whom much is given, of the same much shall be required, right? So when God gives us so much, you may miss it. You may miss all what God has for you, and you can be poor. You can miss all that God has given you. You can have so much, and you miss it. You can have nothing and still miss what God has for you, of the purpose of why. So poor is a relative term. Are you cold? Is that fan hitting you? Pray for my wife. All right, so number one, there's three reasons of how a person gets to be poor. Number one is straits. S-T-R-A-I-G-H-T-S. It's burdens of life. The things that we put ourselves in. Straits. We're in a strait betwixt two. The things that put us in a bind. Sometimes the burden of life puts us in a bind and we become what other people consider poor. Has anybody here ever had a car break down on them? I know we're Baptists, we don't really raise our hand. Has anyone here ever had both cars break down on them in the same week? It's been, well, I remember we were in Florida. We were in New York. We have it in Florida, but worse in New York. Was we were up there all alone. We had a Ford Taurus, awesome Ford Taurus. Loved that car to death, literally to death. And the car died. The transmission went out on it. And then we had another car, the Buick. We actually got married, and this was our getaway car, a 1992 Buick Century. That's right. I was old before I got old. And I had a 1992 Buick Century, and that was our getaway car, and then the alternator went on that one. So within, like, literally two hours, both of our cars went down. And we were literally stranded. We had nothing, we had no way of getting around. We were like, Chris was in one direction, I was in another, and we're just like, wow. So we get a tow truck, we get the car towed to a guy in our church who said he would fix our car. We got it towed to his house. We went back and got the church van, and the church van broke down. And I was like, okay, we're not supposed to go anywhere. I get it. All right, I got it. But sometimes burdens of life puts us in a strait betwixt two. Sometimes the burdens of life makes us poor. Sometimes it's, hey, your job laid off. It's cutting costs, your job laid off, and you were low on the seniority poll, and you got knocked out and whatever, and you lose that job. That's a strait of life. It's not because you were not a good employee. It's because the company went under, or because the company was going under, and they cut loss. Sometimes it's, hey, your roof has, roof breaks, or your furnace blows up, or whatever. Sometimes you come to a place of lack where you actually you have to live without something for a while simply because of the burdens of life. It could be a septic issue, but sometimes the burdens of life get you to where you have to go without for some time before you can catch back out of that. It could be, hey, sometimes people make the burdens of life. I remember like Brother Ed went through that a little bit, taking care of his wife, and then he took care of his dad. And Ed did that. He made sure he was the burdens of life, the things he was responsible for, the things that he took upon himself. Those make people into a bad position. They get into a place where they're poor. They live without things in order to benefit others. Okay, and that's a straight of life. Another reason why people become poor is by station. It's their upbringing. It's the upbringing and the time of life they're in. Anybody here who's got kids, raising kids, you are by no means rich, right? You'll never come to money. It's never going to happen. You start raising kids, and boy, that one kid goes through a growth spurt. I remember a couple years ago, Abigail went through from a size 3 or size 4 shirt. It's been a couple years back now. She literally grew like 3 shoe sizes in 3 weeks. It was like, poof. I'm like, no way in the world. Abigail 3 years ago was like thin little girl. Abigail's not a thin little girl no more. She's a chunk-a-lunk. And it's just like, poof. It's like, wow, like really? And trying to get, it's just everybody. There's always different times of people's lives that people go through. But with kids, you're never going to find that rich. Prepare yourself now. When you start having kids, you'll never be rich. Everybody will always look at you and saying, oh, he's having a hard time. He's poor. And you'll know that because they give you hand-me-downs, all right? You know you're poor and they give you hand-me-downs. So, upbringing is in the time of life that people are in, but sometimes even the upbringing. How many of us how many of us grew up country? We talk about country. The stuff that the city people had, we didn't have it. It was not necessary. We were just country. You lived by a garden. Right? You live by having a garden. You didn't have the luxury of going to a grocery store every day. You went to the garden. I get to tease Daniel and Gabriel a lot about this, but tomato sandwiches. We grew up on tomato sandwiches, making homemade garlic bread. Out of like plain white bread, right? Making garlic bread out of a little toaster oven. Fried bologna sandwiches. Bologna sandwiches. Peanut butter and jelly. Getting creative with your peanut butter and jelly. You've got grilled peanut butter and jelly. Oh yeah, baked peanut butter and jelly. Oh yeah, double-decker peanut butter and jelly. When you start going through, you start learning the stations, but there's things that we live in life that it's how we live. It's the things that we went by. We didn't go out and get a brand new something. We went and repaired it. You fixed it so you couldn't fix it anymore. It wasn't like just disposable. There's no such thing as disposable anything. My mom would wash paper plates. Okay, that might have been a little bit poor. But it's like, we literally went to paper plates. We literally went. I remember one year, we had nothing. My dad lost his job. The company went under. He lost his job. And he got a part-time, he got like a 30-hour a week job. Didn't pay, like, back then, $6.25 was like a lot of money. But he didn't make anything. And he was working in Utica, which is about 45 minutes away. And we were like literally on our last pennies. Mom would go out and get dollar store presents. Get dollars to the Dollar Tree was our best friend. We went and got puzzles. You know those little dollar puzzles you get with the cute little kittens on them? My mom went and took those, cut the sides out, like on the box, cut them out, and took the decorative, colorful ones, made bookmarks. That was a Christmas present, a bookmark. Mom took Mom took the cardboard frame that had a picture of the animal on it, whatever, and she took it to the bottom of it, the bottom tray, and she took that and she put it together and she put a little bit of lace around it and decorated it, and that was our Christmas presents. Pictures of puzzles. We were like, my mom made things work. It was like the most incredible. One year we didn't have any garland, we didn't have any Christmas tree decorations, so literally we went and made popcorn and we strung popcorn together for decorations. I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding you. It was like we made do what we had. But we never thought ourselves poor. We never thought in a million years we're poor. We're just like, okay, we don't have money to go out to eat. No big deal. Okay, everybody lives like this. And then when we found out that we were poor, it was like, whoa, we're the poor people? Sweet. And it was like, all right, we're the poor people. We finally got a station. We're not average. We're something special. And I remember being like that. I was like, but the poor people, sometimes it comes by station. They come up by upbringing. I don't know what it's like to have $3,000 laying around. I'm sure no one else here does either. I don't know what it's like to have money laying around for anything. I don't know what it's like. My whole life I've always lived, week to week, bill to bill, paycheck by paycheck, day by day. I've always lived that way. So there's people that are upbringing that way, and they'll never know that they're poor. They don't even realize they're poor. They just live from day to day, and they don't even know that they're poor. Okay? And by the way, if you go and tell someone they're poor, they get offended. Because we're not poor, we're just how we live our life. But some people, they choose after having plenty, after all this, the headaches and burdens of a house, the headaches and burdens of a car, all these things, they come to a place where like, I want to get rid of everything. I want to boil my life down to absolutely nothing. No more stress, no more headache, no more property. This is why people that live up in the north move to Florida when they get old. They go down their snowbirds. They move to Florida. Why do I do that? It's because they choose out of satisfaction to be poor. They don't want anything more. They don't want anything less. They're comfortable and they're complacent. The Bible says in Proverbs chapter 30, Agur says, he says, just give me enough bread. Give me enough that I'm not despising God, but not so much that I forget God. He said, I just want to be complacent. I just want to be comfortable. I don't want anything more. I don't want anything less. I want to get enough to get by. And Jesus taught us to pray. When he taught us the model prayer, he said, give us this day our what? Our daily bread. Teach us to number our days. Teach us the realization that tomorrow is not guaranteed to us. We don't need to worry about tomorrow. We need to worry about the kingdom of God and what's going for us today. And focus on that today. So that's what the Bible kind of speaks about the poor. But interesting, a poor man that oppresseth the poor is like a sweeping rain which leaveth no food. You know the saddest thing is the most highest crime rates is among the poor communities. That's just dumb. So we're a bunch of poor people living in the projects. I'll use that word for a second, okay? People living in the projects, the most highest crime is done by people in the projects. And they're people done to the people in the projects. Rape. There's really no worse thing that a person can do to another human being than rape. You think about it. That's like the worst thing a person can do. That's like the worst. Killing them, okay, it's over with. The scars that someone does by that, even worse. The highest rape victims are in projects among those who are quote unquote poor. They oppress the poor. That's dumb, right? Thief, robbery, theft. It's done within. It's muggings. It's all done within the poverty-stricken areas. Well, why is that? Because the poor that oppresses the poor is like a sweeping rain, which leaveth no food. You get a flood. You've never had a hurricane go through or a flood, and it wipes out everything around you. Rain is a good thing. Rain is not always a bad thing, right? Rain is a bad thing. It's not always a good thing. But rain and how you use it, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But here it's destructive, and it leaves everything around it wasted, and there's nothing to it. I remember we were in New York, and they just built this brand new Section 8 complex, brand new houses. I mean, they tore down the existing, they refurbished it, they put up new buildings, gorgeous property. Within 3 years, that place was trashed. But why? Because you can put a dog, you can take an animal out of the jungle. What's the phrase I'm looking for? They just waste it. They just waste it. They have no response. They have no respect of anything. And a poor person that oppresses the poor is like a sweeping rain. It's sad. Number two, the proud. The proud considers not the poor, other than being tools to their gain. In Proverbs 28 verse 8, the Bible says this: "He that by usury and unjust gain increaseth his substance, he shall gather to him that will pity the poor." So a person who charges unnecessary interest, charges interest and unjust gain, those people gather their wealth to the person who will pity the poor. So the proud, they consider not the poor except as an avenue to get rich. Okay? Verse number 11. The rich man is wise in his own conceit, but the poor that hath understanding searcheth him out. So the proud is going to be proud and angry. He's going to be full of himself. Look how I've gotten it. I'm wise in my own conceit. But the poor that have understanding searcheth him out. So they're going to find out what's going on. They're going to make sure that they're operating by justice. They're going to operate by truth. They're not going to operate by unjust means. But verse number 19 through 22, and then 24 through 28, the Bible talks about a man that doth violence to the blood of any person shall flee to the pit. Let no man stay him. So a person who goes off and oppresses, that person is going to be finding themselves going to the pit. They're going to wind themselves going to the jail. They're going to wind themselves being destroyed. You can't help that person. That person is beyond help because they're so proud they won't take any correction. Right? So the proud there, they just kind of take it by what they have. Verse number 20, a faithful man shall abound with blessings, but he that maketh haste to be rich shall not be innocent. If all you're doing is you're focusing to make money and you're trying to get the richest you can, you will not get it, and you'll never be satisfied. Hell enlarges itself, and hell is some of the things that Bible says in Proverbs 30. The things that are never full, never satisfied, is a wanting eye. You'll never be satisfied. You'll always be greedy. You'll always want gain. And that's the problem with covetousness. Verse 22, he that hasteth to be rich hath an evil eye. If you want to hurry to be rich, you've got an evil eye. You're always looking for property. You're always looking for possessions. You're always looking for the easy fix. You're always trying to gamble, and you're always trying to make money. You're trying to gamble and make your whole purpose to make fast money. You'll never be satisfied. You don't know how to handle that money. Someone gives you $10,000, you'll waste it. You've got no idea how to handle $10,000. So the poverty will come to him. He considers not that poverty shall come to him. You'll never pay attention to it. You'll lose everything you have because you're trying to make that quick money. You'll lose businesses. You'll lose houses. You'll lose cars. You'll lose everything you have because you're trying to get the next thing. You're always trying to one up. And it's unjust, right? Verse 24, whoso robbeth his father and his mother, and saith that is no transgression, the same as a companion of a destroyer. When you rob your own parents, you're stupid. I'm sorry, in Christian love, you're an idiot. All right? I mean, if you're going to rob your own parents, something's wrong with you. But it's not just monetary gain that you rob your parents. When you rob your parents of grandkids, when you rob your parents of seeing you get married, when you rob your parents of a good upbringing, and you squander all that you have, a good reputation, a good name in the community, you squander that by bad choices, by the things you do, you rob your parents. The glory of parents is our grandchildren. The glory of your parents is your grandchildren. And if we, that's why it's so important. So, well, I don't ever want to get married. Well, then you're robbing the purpose of it. You ought to get married. You ought to have kids. You ought to settle down. You ought to get married. Get married. Find a spouse. Get married. Settle down. Have kids. That's what ought to happen, right? And this is the part that kills it too. Is there are so many out there that want children, and when my wife and I, we wanted children. Before how old were we? Let's see how old we're married. How old are we now? For 9 years, over 9 years ago. So we've been married for 17 years.
Married for
19 years. How long have we been married? How long have we been married?
17.
We've been married 17 years. How did you put up with me? Goodness. All right. So anyway, we've been married for 17 years, and we wanted children right away. We prayed for children. We wanted children. God didn't give us children. Doctors told us it was impossible for us to have kids. What do you do? Tried foster care. Tried here and there. Promises here, promises there. Baby in California, a baby in Texas, a baby in Florida. We prayed for kids. God gave us out. Thank God for that. We want more kids. God's given us Hazel and Cindy. We want more kids. We want kids. And when you see people who have kids not take care of their kids, or not even be around their kids, and they pass them off to their grandparents, That's sad. It's sad. But we ought to want kids, and we ought to have that. But so a lot of times, whoso robbeth his father and his mother, and seeth it as no transgression, the same as a companion of destroyer. When you take from your parents, you're a companion of destroyer. He that is of a proud heart stirreth up strife, but he that putteth his trust in the Lord shall be made fat. So a person that's proud heart, they're going to stir up strife. They're always going to find an issue. They're always going to find drama. They're always going to find things, even if it doesn't pertain to them, they're going to find a reason to get involved. But we're just supposed to trust the Lord, and we're supposed to just let him satisfy us. All right, so the prince, when there's much given, much is required, but you also notice there's things about covetousness. And I'll give you the verses here, and I'll kind of quickly hit on some of these things. But in verse 2, for the transgression of a land, many are the princes thereof. So the princes are responsible for the transgression of land. They're the one they're there because of the transgression, and they're there to handle the transgression. Okay, the princes are there to rule and execute justice and judgment. Their responsibility is to do those things. That's why princes were given, to help with government. The government is supposed to be the one who we plead our problem with, right? But by a man of understanding and knowledge, the state thereof shall be prolonged. So the princes ought to be there to help rule and reign, but a lot of times the princes are the ones who are causing the issue. Look at verse number 7. Whoso keepeth the law is a wise son, but he that is a companion of riotous men shameth his father. So the companion of the riotous men shameth his father. Who are the riotous men? The riotous men are not people causing riots, flipping over police cars and burning buildings on fire. Riotous is without restraint. Remember the Bible says the prodigal son, he wasted his substance with what? Riotous living. He wasted his substance with riotous living. Well, what is that? It's lasciviousness. They just kind of lived without rule, without law. They just kind of did as they pleased. They were full of covetousness, full of greed, full of envy, and it destroyed those things. So he says, whoso keepeth the law is a wise son. But he that is a companion of riotous men shall shameth his father. And you can't stop and remember that this book was written by a king to his son, the prince, reminding him to avoid evil communications, to avoid wrong people in his life. So it says in verse number 8, he that by usury and unjust gain increaseth his substance, he shall gather for him that will pity the poor. Whose responsibility is to regulate usury? The prince, the government. The government should be the ones who oversees and limits usury and unjust gain. Who's supposed to execute righteousness and judgment in this world? The government. That's who we have the government for. The government is supposed to stop usury. The government is supposed to stop unjust gain. But what do you do when the government is doing the unjust gain? What are you supposed to do when the government is doing the unjust usury? That's the thing he's writing. So you got to remember that. So when you do it to increase your substance, you're going to gather it to him that will pity the poor. Everything that you get ungodly is going to be given to someone who is godly. Sooner or later, it may take 50 years, it may take 100 years, but sooner or later, everything that you gain, that a person gains by unjust and unbiblical reasons, they're just gathering it, and God's going to disperse it to the poor. America has got wealth. It's going to be dispersed to the poor because of the way we take care of things. Look, I understand. I believe that we need to have people come to America with legal ramifications. Illegal immigrants, it's illegal. Okay, we have rules, we have laws set up. They ought to come to America. They ought to come the right way, but we ought to help them get here the right way. If people want to come to America, they want to become citizens, we ought to make it we ought to vet them, yes, but we need to make sure we're helping out 99% of the immigrants that are coming to America are not drug dealers. 99% of them that are coming in here are not people who are trying to disrupt America and rape our kids and our women, right? It's pure nonsense. 90% of these people come here on green cards, or they come here on work visas or student visas. They work here a little bit. They're picking our fruits and vegetables. They're harvesters. They're hard-working people. They're trying to make a living. Okay, and we got to help the poor. We ought not oppress them. We also make sure that the law is upheld as well. Okay, that's just a thought on that one. Whoso causes the wicked to go astray in an evil way, he shall fall himself in his own pit. So it talks about here a person who causes the righteous to go astray in an evil way. It talks a lot about the wicked bearing rule. Look at verse number 12. When righteous men do rejoice, there is great glory. But when the wicked rise, a man is hidden. He says it again towards the end of the passage. He says the same thing. It says in verse number 15, as a roaring lion and a raging bear, so is a wicked ruler over the poor people. The prince that wanteth understanding is also a great oppressor. So the ruler who doesn't have common sense, enough common sense you can shake a stick at, when that guy doesn't have a clue what he's doing, he's just an oppressor, he's without knowledge, without biblical discretion, without godly discretion, he'll never succeed. Solomon asked God for specific things. God said, you can have wealth, you can have fame, what do you want? And he says, I want to have wisdom to rule the people. Of all the things I want wisdom to rule the people. And God gave him wealth. God gave him fame. God gave those things to rule the people, but he forgot to use that same judgment in his own personal relationships. Verse number 19. He that tilleth his land shall have plenty of bread, but he that followeth after vain persons shall have poverty enough. I think America is the politicians that we have in office today are selling themselves out to vain people who are lobbyists. Always pushing some other business or some monopoly. They're not giving themselves to what's best for the country. The House just passed a $2,000 bill, a 2,000 page bill that dismantles everything we've been trying to do for 3 or 4 years in the country, 5 years. We've been trying to get for our country, repealing Obamacare, defunding Planned Parenthood, helping reduce college debt. All these different things that we're trying to help take care of in America, they passed this bill to push it through. And they did it on the coat strings of, if you pass this bill, we'll vote yes, or we'll help you vote and get impeach Trump. And it was a coattails. It was the same. It was in the cloak of darkness that went through. Now the Senate's got to go through this 2,000-page document that's got nothing good of it. And I'm not preaching Fox News politics. I don't watch Fox News. I don't have a TV to watch Fox News. What I am telling you is the world, the lobbyists are oppressing us, and they're vain people, and anybody worth their salt needs to look past the lobbyists. And we don't have that. And our political people, our political princes, if I could say that, are just following after lobbyists, vain people, and they're destroying everybody around them. They're going to have poverty to everybody. A faithful man shall abound with blessings, but he that maketh haste to be rich shall not be innocent. If all you're trying to do by leadership is to make the best and make the most money, you're not innocent. You're part of the problem. Look upon the needs of others. Look at it says in verse number 22, he that hasteth to be rich hath an evil eye, and considereth not that poverty shall come upon him. If you don't consider, if you haste to be rich, you have an evil eye, you're not realizing you're going to fall into poverty. Again, that same verse again. When the wicked rise, men hide themselves, but when they perish, the righteous increase. You're going to see more and more righteous people taking a back seat, hiding, because the wicked are in authority. The wicked rule. And I'm not just talking about the highest office in the land. All over the place. All over the place. But lastly, you've noticed in the fourth person, we saw the poor, we saw the proud, we saw the prince. Now we're looking at the prudent quickly. There's 3 things of what the prudent does, and we can find this in the passage, all throughout the passage. Mostly by, this is what the bad people do, this is what right does, okay? You can kind of read throughout the passage and find these 3 truths. Quickly, number 1 is the prudent are aware of the needs of others. Look not every man on his own things, but also every man on the things of others, right? Let this mind be in you, which is also in Christ Jesus, who, being the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal to God. So sometimes the need that you have isn't the need that you have. Sometimes the need that other people see is not the need that you see. Well, I don't have $20 to pay the bill. Okay, maybe the help that people are going to give you is not going to be a $20 bill or a $50 bill. Maybe it's going to be truth or principles to help you not get behind on that bill, or help you make money to get that bill. Okay, sometimes that and we can see that with the people on the street. I'm not saying that the average person out there holding a sign, will work for food, is not hungry. Sometimes they are. And sometimes things in life gets in that place. And And I believe sometimes they are hungry. But I also know that if I can give them principles and I can give them biblical wisdom and help them where they really need it, that's what we need. That's what they really need. That's what they really need. We need to be aware of the needs of others and give them those things. Be willing to give reproof and give that truth when it's needed. Verse number 23, he that rebuketh a man afterwards shall have more favor than he that flattereth his tongue. Say what's needed to be said. Regardless if they take it right then and there, if you give the truth and you do it in the right attitude, with the right motives and the right spirit, and anytime we give correction, it ought to be towards restoration. I'll say that again. Anytime we give correction, it ought to be towards restoration. But if I wait until I blast someone out of the water and it's because of the point of no return, I'll never have that reward. I'll never have that reward. When a brother starts going astray, when a sister starts going astray, when that coworker starts slacking off, one of us need to come alongside and say, hey, can I be a friend here? Can I help you? A friend loveth at all times. Right? Faithful are the wounds of a friend. Open rebuke is better than secret love. So go in there and address this situation, but it always ought to yield towards restoration. It's for that person to get right and restore. If we're waiting to tell someone off, it's not rebuke. It's not reproof. It's selfishness. Number 2, they avoid evil and wicked men and deeds. A prudent person avoids evil and wicked men in their deeds. They avoid everything of it. Their tactics, their tools, they avoid them. They avoid it, they see it, they pass on by. They say, you know what? No, I'm going on this side over here instead. Separation is necessary. Biblical separation is necessary in our lives. But it's not always the things that we see. There are things to separate over. There are things to address. But let's make sure the things that we're separating over are worth separating over. But if you're separating without approaching the person first and foremost, you failed. You don't get to go to the head of the class. You don't get anything but a snare to your soul because you didn't go and address the situation first. You address the situation and then you make room for separation. In Matthew chapter 18, Jesus gives 3 steps for separation from breaking fellowship or church discipline. I'll use the word church discipline, or from breaking fellowship. Number 1 is you go to that person one-on-one. Matthew chapter 18, verse 15 through 18. First one is you go to them one-on-one. You don't do anything else before you go to that person one-on-one. You don't pass go. You don't collect $200. You don't go to boardwalk. You go to that person one-on-one. If that person refused to hear you, you go to 2 or 3 witnesses. You take 2 or 3 witnesses, and you bring them to address the situation. If after that second approach doesn't work, then you go bring it before the church. And if he does not hear the church, then he is to be cast out. That's when you break fellowship. You don't break fellowship and then bring it before the church. You don't break fellowship and then go one-on-one. You don't break fellowship and then bring 2 or 3 witnesses. There's a biblical pattern for how it's done. And a wise person will hear one-on-one is coming to me with a situation. I'm going to take what this person is saying to me. I'm going to examine my heart. I'm going to see if there's any capable way that I'm wrong in the situation. Lord, am I blind to what's being accused? That's what a wise person does. That's what a humble person does. A humble person trusts but verifies. Make sure this is actually what's right in my life. Is this plausible? Is this true? Is this any bit of someone ever comes to me and criticizes me about anything, I'm not doing it because I have a fear of man. I'm doing it because I want to make sure that I'm hearing reproof, that I'm hearing correction. Is this true in my life? But a surefire way that I'm not going to take correction is when it's done in an open setting at church and people are trying to correct me openly. I'm not going to take that because you didn't follow the biblical precedents. You didn't take me step 1, step 2. Make sense? So a wise person takes that. By the way, a wise person ought to receive reproof, receive reproof and rebuke, and ought to give reproof and rebuke. So number 3, number 1, aware of the needs of others, avoids evil and wicked men, and allots correction and gives reproof. They take the correction and they give the reproof. That's what a wise person does. That's what a humble person does. That's what a wise person does. That's what a humble 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 person does. That's what a prudent person does. So the poor, the proud, the prince, and the prudent. In this passage, we find it in Proverbs chapter number 28. And I hope it is a blessing to you, and I pray that we can all apply this to our life, because Proverbs is written and is applicable to all of us. So prayerfully it helps you all and it's an encouragement to you this Christmas season. Let's ask God's blessing on our time of fellowship. Mateo, if you would lead us in prayer.